So a little foolishness spoils great wisdom and honor. The Bible goes on to talk about a wise man's heart directs him toward the right, but the foolish man's heart directs him toward the left. And then he goes on talking about when the nation, as a nation, we just got off Thanksgiving and a celebration of our Memorial Day. We had the Memorial Day service down here at Grand Villa. We had about 25, 30 folks there, and your neighbor was there with us, Sharon, and we had just a great time celebrating the sacrifice that a lot of our military had done. But in 1976, Jimmy Carter, whom I voted for, the former governor of Georgia, was elected to serve as POTUS for 4 years through high interest rates, long lines at the gasoline stations, with the unheard of price of 76 cents a gallon for gasoline. And even though interest rates were 18% and 20%, people had jobs. They were able to pay that interest rate. They paid it and kept on working, and they didn't, whatever. Our embassy in Iran was overtaken by some radical Muslims, and Ted Koppel began Nightline on ABC TV. In the 1980, former governor of California, Ronald Reagan, ran against President Carter, defeated him, and our country seemed to turn around and discover its purpose again. And then in the 1990s, the 2000s, we have public scandals, spiritual apathy, Islamic terrorism, financial greed, and leadership incompetence has brought this great country down to the depths of despair. What is going on in America's needs? America's lost her focus and direction. She's abandoned her God and pursued other gods. America's forsaken her forefathers' ideals. She has become a nation who is directionally challenged. Proverbs 6:32-33 says, "But a man who commits adultery lacks judgment. Whoever does so destroys himself. Blows and disgrace are his lot, and his shame will never be wiped away." You notice the Bible says, "And his shame will never be wiped away." We have our news media, and even the Lakeland Ledger this morning had an article on the religious columnist talking about how Wiener is now serving 21 months in jail for his connivings and his immoralities and his lying. We got Al Franken, and he's owned up to a lot of this stuff, and he's hanging his head in shame, but he's the one that was most outspoken critic of the current president, and as it is he's got mud in his face, or pie in his face, whatever. But you see men like Al Franken, and then you've got good guys like Harvey Weinstein, the Hollywood mogul. The lawyers allegedly donated $10,000 to a Manhattan district attorney who was supposed to pursue a sexual assault against him in 2015, and he decided to drop the case. And this is just one of scores and scores of shenanigans this man has done. And you can identify fools by the way they walk down the street, he says in chapter 10, verse 3. But the Bible talks about shame. And when we talk about how dead flies give perfume a stink, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. And we have this so true. The Bible goes on to say in chapter 10, verse 4, "If a ruler's anger rises against you, do not leave your post. Calmness can lay great errors to rest." Some have argued that Roy Moore, who's being accused of various shenanigans, is staying in the run. He's disclaiming all the criticism against him. And if the man proves to be a man of integrity, then he will fulfill this particular scripture that says, if the powers that be rise against you, don't leave your post, stay the course, stay calm, and that will lay great errors to rest. And if the man is guilty, he'll be like the book of Proverbs. He will not get away from that stain against his blemished character for the rest of his life. Only time will tell. We talk about folly in government, verses 5 to 7. He says, "There's an evil I have seen under the sun, the sword of error that arises from a ruler. Fools are put in many high positions, while the rich occupy the low ones. I've seen slaves on horseback, and princes go on foot like slaves. Now I remember when I was in college, Bible college, we had one of our professors says, the way they're pushing dope and pushing pothead and all the other stuff, he says, wait until these become the presidents of the United States. Wait until these guys become captains of Exxon Valdez tanker ships. Wait till these guys become airplane pilots of a commercial aircraft carrier or plane carrier. He's talking about this folliness, and it's a blemish against the situation where we've seen a great error arising from rulers where well, here we go. There's another evil I've seen under the sun. Kings and rulers make a grave mistake when they give great authority to foolish people and low positions to people of proven worth. Jamaica went through a big change of government, and they always say the Orange Party is better than the Green Party, and the Green Party is better than the, well, they call it the Green and the Gold, don't they, Mama? Labor and People Party and the Labor Party. And we were trying to get our medical people getting their certificates, and if you're there constantly, you apply for a certain license, and you get your license on a semi-permanent basis, so you don't have to send all your paperwork and your birth certificate and your marriage license and all the other ridiculous things. They ask them 2 letters of character, intent, and all the other, plus money. And we went down to the Department of Ministry in Kingston, Jamaica, and went into the Department of Health. And we expected to see a silver-haired older nurse lady in charge, and here they had this kid that was about 22 years old, and she's in charge of the entire Department of Health. And we were asking, you know, did you receive our checks? They wanted us to send them cash. You don't send cash to Jamaica, you send a check. And we sent them a check, and she says, well, I don't know. My wife says, there's a file cabinet over there that says J for Jamaica Bible Seminary. You think it might be under J for Jamaica Bible Seminary? Well, I'll look. And she opened up, and there was a file. And then on her floor, by her desk, was a stack of unfiled stuff this high, unfiled. And I started going through it. And I found one of my uncashed checks 2 years old. You know what happens to a check that's 2 years old? It ain't no good. After 6 months, the check's dead. And I suppose if they did want her money, they would have cashed her check, so they wanted her money down in Jamaica. But since they didn't cash the check, apparently they didn't want the money. And I'm thinking, how in the world and why in the world did they ever put this gal? But the one party took over and the other party was out and the new party came in, and she must have been the niece to somebody up in politics to put her in head of the Department of Health for the entire nation. And she can even file stuff, let alone know that you filed Jamaica Bible Seminary under J, in the J file and the thing. And so after we went through there, she promised that we would get our laminated passes for our doctor nurse team. Did we ever get any? One. We got one. I think Jeff finally got his. And that's it. And then we read this book of Ecclesiastes and it says, you know, when foolish people and people low position, they put them up into places of responsibility and leadership. And this is another. I've seen servants riding horseback like princes and princes walking like servants. This isn't fair. Why do certain people get the prestige of leadership and others who are very capable, because they don't have the wealth, they don't have the notoriety, they don't get voted in? And that's kind of what we even see in Lakeland elections and all, Lakeland politics. You have people of integrity, they don't have the money, they don't get voted in. And people without integrity, with the money, get voted in because they can do what they need to do. The MSG translation rewords this: here's a piece of bad business I've seen on earth, an error that can be blamed on whoever's in charge. Immaturity is given a place of prominence, while maturity is made to take a back seat. I've been seen unproven upstarts riding in style, while experienced veterans are put out to pasture. Fools sometimes get to the top. I don't know how it happens, but it happens. Thirdly, as we read the scriptures in verse 8 through 11, he says, whoever digs a pit may fall into it. Whoever breaks through a wall may be bitten by a snake. Whoever quarries stones may be injured by them. Whoever splits logs may be endangered by them. If the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. If a snake bites before it's charmed, there's no profit for the charmer. He's looking at this. My Bible has kind of a footnote that says, by considering the potential risks involved, the wise man can perform these 5 ordinary tasks with success. Can you figure a wise man would be able to dig a pit, would be able to quarry stone, would be able to split a log, and would be able to charm a snake without injury? Now that's incredible. Accidents can hinder without wisdom. He's saying everything is A-OK. C. Vincent Hall talked about this pearl diver there in the Torres Straits of Australia when he was down in Australia in 1910. That was pearl diving, and he got his head stuck in the mouth of a shark. He extricated his head, a little bit scathed, but he lived to tell about it. But accidents can hinder wisdom. And I don't know if you necessarily need to go pearl diving in shark-infested waters, especially when you have the certain kind of sharks that like the pork chops of pearl divers. Whoever digs a pit may fall into it. And I remember the old Tarzan movies. They'd always set a trap for Tarzan, and the bad guy would always fall into it. And the Bible always teaches that too. Anytime you plan a pit for the bad guy, or the bad guy plans a pit for the good guy, the good guy escapes, and the bad guy falls into the quicksand. And it swallows him up. And we say it serves him right. That was old Hollywood, back when they had morals. That's when they had principles. Nowadays, the good guy gets killed and the bad guy gets rewarded. You go figure, but these are the change in morals and mores. He also talks about demolishing an old wall. My wife said, you got too many snakes in this sermon, Richard. She does not like snakes. Oh, daughter, she is a true daughter of Eve. She does not like snakes. But he says, when you demolish an old wall, you could be bitten by a snake. So the wise man Solomon says, be careful. He said, when you work in a quarry, and for 25 years I sold quarry stone, granite from Elberton, and also from the Rock of Ages quarries up in Vermont. And we know about the dangers of these quarries, especially they did not have these big pans and front loaders back in Solomon's day. But I've known cases where these guys run their pan trucks or their front loaders too close to the edge, and next thing you know, the whole machine is going over the side and the guy bails off in the nick of time. When you work in a quarry, you can have a strong fall and it'll crush you. Quarry work is dangerous work. It's respected work. It is hard work. And then he says, when you chop wood, there's danger that each stroke of your axe. I was using this chainsaw getting things ready, and the chain was loose, and that thing kept bucking on me. And I don't like it. That chainsaw just did not seem to be a safe piece of equipment to be cutting wood with. And when you got an axe, the worst thing you do is be chopping with a dull axe. Somebody said there was a contest between 2 woodmen, and they only had 5 minutes to cut through this particular log, and the guy says, what are you going to spend your time doing? He says, I'm going to spend 3 minutes of my time sharpening the axe. And then I'm going to spend 2 minutes of my time chopping the tree down. Using a dull axe requires a lot more strength than sharpening the axe. Take time out to sharpen your axe, and then you can get a little more efficient job. And so again, the wise man Solomon is talking about wisdom. Using a dull axe is not smart. I don't know how in the world we got more snakes in this message, but this was the text and you can't change the Bible. Twice he mentions snakes in here. And he even talks about the snake charmer. A snake charmer needs to know what he's doing before he starts charming snakes. If you don't know what he's doing, then he does not need to be charming snakes. And that's why I say, especially with cobra. According to my source in India, a cobra, if it bites you, you have about 20 minutes to live. And a lot of times you will see Indians that have their hand chopped off or their foot chopped off because they got bit in the wrist or bit by a snake, and they inadvertently take a machete and chop off their member just so they will not die. And so you got handless people and footless people because of the deadly cobra. And they worship these things down in India. I asked Vivek, I says, Vivek, how do you handle cobras down in India? He says, I've killed 10 of them with a double-barrel shotgun. Don't tell my neighbors they worship them, but he goes ahead as an Indian missionary from India. He married an American girl, but he handles cobras with double-barrel shotguns. He don't handle them with a broom handle or with a rake or a hoe. He just handles them with a double-barrel shotgun. They didn't have double-barrel shotguns back in Solomon's day, but he says we need warning. Then again, he talks about here, he says, you cannot correct a fool or he will hate you. Correct a wise man and he will appreciate you. A lot of the wisdom of Solomon. Fourthly, we have the description, the speech and actions of a fool are destructive. Verse 12 says, words from a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the fool is consumed by his own lips. At the beginning his words are folly. At the end is their wicked madness, and the fool manipulates words. No one knows what is coming. Who can tell him what will happen after him? A fool's work wearies him. He does not know the way to town. I always like that when you ask directions and somebody gives you directions and you talk to somebody else and they give you different directions and you're coming, you're going. But woe to you, O land, whose king was a servant, whose princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, whose king is of noble birth, whose princes eat at the proper time, for strengthen and not for drunkenness. If a man is lazy, the rafters sag. If his hands are idle, the house leaks. A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes life merry. But money is the answer for everything. It's kind of interesting in this particular when he talks about words of a fool's speech is destructive. Words that may be calling people loners or skinny, ugly or fat, or nerd or stupid or loser. Wise man's speech, of course, wins them favor. Wise words bring approval, but the fool's words, fools are destroyed by their own words. And it says a fool's speech also hurts himself. It's been said by a wise person, a fool tells you what he will do. A boaster tells you what he has done. A wise man does it and says nothing. Ever talk about the post turtle? Who knows? You know he didn't get there by himself. He doesn't belong up there. He doesn't know what to do while he's up there. Everyone wonders why anyone would put him up there in the first place. And you scratch your head and wonder about the post turtle. We talk about pride stifles communication because it takes away both the desire and the courage to apologize. Do not hurry yourself in your spirit to become offended, for the taking of offense is what rests in the bosom of the stupid ones. Ecclesiastes 7:9. Here's a man who's a foolish person that's hanging on to his pride. The hand of God, the hand of help reaches down, and he's got to either A, drop his pride and reach up, or go to the bottom of the canyon linked to his sins. Fools never clean up their own messes. Yeah, Dan, I had to do it.
Yeah.
I had to do it. Fools never clean up their own messes. They just leave their mess for you and me to clean up. God holds a future. In 10:14 it says, some say the future will be great. The other says the future will be awful, totally awful. And God speaks from heaven and says the future doesn't care what you think. Verse 15, what's it tell us here in verse 15? A fool's work wearies him. He does not know the way to town. He's got his controller in his thumb and he's too lazy to even feed his face with a fork. He also talks about those in leadership. They're already partying, they're already feasting in the first part of the day, and the first part of the day is for doing the king's business. The morning time is when you're supposed to do your business. Take care of the activities and works of state. But he says, here's where you have foolish leaders who are partying instead of leading and ruling. You got the good king who wants to throw away a few shiny coins, or the bad king who's a greedy glutton and says, it's all mine. We talk about the lazy man. He says the rafters sag, the hands are idle, the house leaks. I remember we had this gentleman, his name was Oscar Landman. He was a hermit, lived in this farmhouse, and they found coal on his land. And the man came out, he gave me $200 one day for taking his jug water, and he's filling up his jug at the church spigot. And he'd have a couple milk jugs with a rope around his neck, and he'd haul in these jugs and he'd fill them up at the church spigot. He says, thank you, preacher, for letting me fill up my jugs. And he handed me a fistful of bills. I didn't look at them until later. I gave it to the elder. It was part of the bill. It was all $20 bills. It was $200. Later on, the man left $70,000, $35,000 to the Methodist Church and $35,000 to the Oak Grove Church of Christ there in Pennsylvania, where he ministered. It was part of his. But he, as a hermit, though, the coal guy that was stripping his coal dumped a load of coal on the man's front porch. And the man was so lazy he would not take the coal off his front porch and put it in his stove to keep warm. That's how lazy he was. It was something else. But the rafters of his house finally sagged, and people thought he hid his money in the house. He had a 2-story farmhouse. They tore it to the ground. Some squatters got in there, and the squatters told everybody, oh, the preacher gave me permission, we can stay. I went over there to see what was going on, and they had a gun sitting there, and I was not armed. They says, okay if we stay here, preacher? Yeah, be my guest, stay there all you want. I'm not going to argue with the opposite side of a .38 revolver. But they tore his house apart, board by board, putting it in their little stove, keeping themselves warm all winter long. They thought he had money in the rafters, but he had money in the bank. A party gives laughter, and wine gives happiness, and money gives everything. That's an attitude. And then he says these foolish leaders hurt their subordinates. Absence from any harmful thing, as dead flies give perfume a bad smell, so little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. Let me tell you this about habits. Good habits, like going to church, prayer, reading your Bible, good habits are hard to get but easy to live with. Bad habits, cussing, addictions, they're easy to get but hard to live with. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. And finally, verse 20. Do not revile the king even in your thoughts, or curse the rich in your bedroom, because a bird of the air may carry your words, and a bird on the wing may report what you say. A little bit of wisdom. Don't curse the king in your thoughts. Don't curse the rich even in your bedroom, for a bird of the air may carry your voice, and a bird in flight may tell the matter. Oh, how I hate my boss. Oh, how I hate my teacher. Oh, how I hate my landlord. Oh, how I hate my mother-in-law, or my daughter-in-law, or my grandkids, or my whatever, or my stepmother, or my daughter's ex. For a little bird might deliver your message and tell them what you said. And so we've got the Peter principle we've discussed in this message. In a hierarchy, employees tend to rise to their levels of incompetence. Life is unfair. You notice the big fish is in the little bowl and the little fish is in the big bowl. And this is life. This is the book of Ecclesiastes. Why Solomon, 3,000 years ago, can look over his shoulder and talk about dead flies giving perfume a bad smell and a little folly outweighing wisdom and honor. How could a man be right on target 3,000 years later? Old wisdom from an old king speaking to us today in the modern church. A little bit of wisdom. But then the last chapter he tells us this. He says, this is the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And wisdom in life is accepting God's sacrifice of Jesus Christ upon the cross, his death, his burial and resurrection, knowing that he died on the cross for us, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life.